I spent my early childhood living in Kenya, where I was born, in Nairobi, in a small suburb called Buruburu. I am the eldest of three, all girls, and we were raised by our mum and dad, as well as the village of aunts, uncles, close family friends, who were a constant presence in those early years. My mum was working at the Commercial Bank of Africa, and my dad was at the British Council. Our childhood was colourful, it was fun, and I distinctively remember unintentionally exploiting moments when one of my siblings was ill and using it as a chance to play doctors. I was aware from a young age, or at least I hoped, that my small effort would relieve her of whatever pain that she was feeling. However, having been responsible for a broken arm and a sprained elbow, I hardly think I was the right person for her in that time of my life. My grandparents on both sides were head teachers and teachers. We went to a private day school, and school was very important to us. That was not lost on us at all. We were expected to learn, and we were expected to be number one in all our class ranks, something that my sisters and I luckily achieved often. But I share this insight into my childhood to highlight the investment that was made in us as girls. We grew up affirmed, we grew up privileged, but we were affirmed of the endless opportunities that were available to us. And I share this experience and my insight with you because within the field of sexual and gender-based violence, you're often met with a sudden and sharp feeling of, this could have easily been me. And I suppose because a lot of the work I do at Forward is within East Africa, so it hits quite close to home. Forward is an African-led organisation. For over 30 years, we've pioneered work on female genital mutilation and other issues relating to sexual and gender-based violence. Last summer, we were visiting our implementing partners in Uganda, Akina Mama Wa Africa, and I had the chance to catch up with a really good friend of mine. I've known her since I was about 16. She, like me, is the eldest of all her siblings, and she's an all-round remarkable woman. Over the past 7 years, our relationship has been maintained mainly through WhatsApp communication and Facebook. And as good as they are, how do you, through WhatsApp, explain that the reason you're having to supplement your school fees by selling jewelry is not because you don't have school fees. Actually, it's because the person who pays your school fees is withholding them because you refuse to have sex with him. How do you explain over WhatsApp that it's not just as easy as reporting him because A, he'll probably bribe your case away, or B, that even if you did tell someone, you probably won't be believed and it will actually make things a lot worse for you than they already are. Now, sexual and gender-based violence happens to both men and women. Gender speaks to society's ideas of masculinity and femininity, and these ideas give rise to various forms of violence. But I'd like to draw attention to how in many contexts and in outrageous numbers, it disproportionately affects women and girls. In their lifetime, a third of all women will experience violence from a male non-partner or an intimate partner. And that doesn't even account for the women who experience violence in same-sex relationships. Over 200 million women and girls have experienced FGM. And we know that 71% of all human trafficking victims are women and girls. Now, these figures are likely to be a huge misrepresentation because within violence against women and girls, there are so many hidden players. Violence against women and girls is conflated by everything from climate change to capitalism, from religion to race. And so faced with this reality, it can become very overwhelming, and you're often faced with this idea that actually we're never going to be enough. We'll never make enough of an impact. Where does it start? Where will it end? And what's the point? So from that space, I guess it's logical for us to think of ideas to eradicate sexual and gender-based violence. So we can go to the drawing board. And I suppose one idea could be that we'll just get rid of all the patriarchy and everyone who perpetuates it. But that sounds a bit like let's kill all men, and I'm not advocating for that at all. And in reality, a lot of us in this room are actually guilty of, perpetuating these ideals. I think of the times I'm often stuck in a train carriage, well, not stuck, but it's crammed and it's rush hour. So there'll be one remaining seat on the train carriage that I have spotted, but that simultaneously a guy has spotted. And so we'll stand around awkwardly for like half a second before he will more than likely offer me the seat. And I'm not gonna lie, in that moment I'm tired, so I will more than likely comply. Because as feminist as I am, in that second, patriarchy is convenient for me. Never mind the fact that we're both as tired as each other. So we can park that idea to the side, and what we can try to do perhaps is carry on investing in long-standing organizations, because they have the personnel, the brilliance, and the people to have an impact. But what happens when these organizations become the perpetrators of violence, finding a system of constant need, little hope of sustainability? And I'm talking about the foreign aid workers, the doctors and nurses who, even in this country, abuse their power to exploit locals and the general public. And unfortunately, it's not just a one-person thing, because you see, like patriarchy, this abuse is deeply institutionalized and it is deeply structural. The district of Mpwapwa in the Dodoma region of Tanzania has a 51% rate of teenage pregnancy. Last summer, we sat in the veranda of a very small 7x7 cafe that one of the beneficiaries from our Child Mothers program had set up. The Child Mothers program is implemented by our partners Child Dignity Forum, and it offers, amongst other activities, enterprise workshops. So through her business, she was successfully providing for her 2-year-old son and herself being only 17 years old. But it was a bittersweet moment as she went on to explain how out of her roughly £40 monthly income, £30 went towards rent demanded from her by the government. She explained how often customers, mainly men, would walk in and out, eat, drink, and refuse to pay her simply because she's a woman, because she's young. What's her voice going to do? And literally, as we were sitting there, men were walking in, taking drinks, helping themselves. No payments were made. No acknowledgements were given. And so again, it would seem that having considered 3 broad but all-encompassing ideas, getting rid of the patriarchy, jokingly, investing in INGOs, funding grassroots level organizations, that not one has the exact desired effect. And again, at this point, it's easy for disillusion to enter. So I'd like to offer 3 small concerted movements that are proving effective in ending sexual and gender-based violence. Small efforts that we cannot afford to negate. Number 1, the rally cry. Me Too, Time's Up, Women's March London, One Ask. The global movement on sexual and gender-based violence owes a lot to online and on-the-ground marches. Women and men showing up, using their voice to speak truth to power. The New York Times recently reported that at least 200 prominent men had lost their roles in the entertainment industry, politics, the corporate world, in the wake of the Me Too movement. it has literally shifted the narrative around sexual and gender-based violence, allowing us to speak about it more openly everywhere. In the last 2 years, countless videos and footage of university lecturers sexually harassing their students has gone viral. 5 years ago, I sincerely doubt that Makerere University in Uganda would have sufficiently or appropriately or successfully dealt with a complaint of sexual harassment, let alone tweet one of their lecturers' suspension letters. But it's happened. And here we are, living in the ripple effects of a rally cry. Small movement number 2, the local feminist network. This is a bit of a 2 for the price of 1 point, so I will start with the local network. The women and girls we work with don't need a handout. They don't need sympathy. What they do want and need is a fair opportunity to be at the forefront of change that they want to see, and the agency to make those decisions. And that's the case for all the projects that Forward works on. I think of one of our TEDxLSE fellows in the UK who identified the need for Black students, particularly girls, to be engaged in issues of political representation, harmful practices, and identity. From a small pilot group of 10, she's been able to engage her head teacher in drawing up plans for annual workshops. I think also of our Dream Project in Sierra Leone, which is implemented by our partners G2G. In just 4 years, by coming to our girls' clubs networks, 700 girls have avoided FGM. And in this last year, no one girl was cut, no one girl was married early. But I guess the most exciting thing about this movement is the emphasis on nurturing resilient feminist leaders, because you see, there's no point investing and providing leadership opportunities if these same women step into positions of power and implement those same patriarchal attitudes that we have today. We'll just be stuck where we are forever. So I'd like to ask all of us to think about how we're going to implement feminist leadership styles in our lines of work, at school, in our daily lives. Choosing collaboration as opposed to, for lack of a better word, dictatorship. Choosing the local network instead of the foreign agenda. Small movement number 3, the individual woman. Within the nonprofit sector, we all have the same issue of numbers equals impact. And it's a really, really unfortunate trend, because it's the way we view a lot of work we do on sexual and gender-based violence. So for example, we will enroll X amount of girls into a comprehensive sexual education program, or we will set up hundreds of gender desks in different locations, and then we'll pat ourselves on the back and say we're effectively tackling violence against women and girls. But we haven't considered the individual woman. We haven't considered her needs. We haven't considered the issues that may prevent her from accessing these services. Cost of fare, distance to the center. Will she have to ask someone for fare, and will that compromise her position? One woman, one girl who has been invested in well may actually be the greatest display of impact. And so finally, I think in my line of work, it struck me that perhaps I'm disillusioned because I don't stop myself often enough to think about the fact that it's not just about figures and data. This work has an impact on the women and girls we work with, even if I don't see it. And that's the point. Small movements still contribute to the larger mass of water. Thank you.